Hey everybody, this is the MMO grind. We have put together a little show here for you well, we don't have any right now, but this is going to be a guest-driven show.
Yeah, we're supposed to have guests. I think
He's
it'd
my
be
guest,
interesting. Yes.
and I'm his guest today, and we're going to talk to the community as a whole about a little bit about each other, interview each other. But the whole entire goal here is that we're going to have guests. We want to explore people in the video game industry, have devs, also have people on here that are part of game communities, talk guild leaders, talk community leaders, even people who just play, say, solo and want to express their opinions. They're from different locales in the world, want to express their opinions on video gaming and have their voices heard. That is what the MMO grind will be here for. So, and Pookha.
Well, general idea, guys, is me and Malice have pretty differing viewpoints on a lot of different things, and also, in my opinion, on our backgrounds in gaming too. And the idea is we will be, coming together, having generally a guest or multiple, and essentially just asking them questions from our different point of views. And the idea is you get a more broader scope of questions, and a lot of people, you've had interviews where you feel like man, that isn't exactly the question I would have asked or the way I would have phrased it. And the idea and the hope is that we would feel that, and we would feel that when one person is asking a question to someone else, we'd be like, but what about this? And hopefully be able to really drill into somebody and get down to the nitty gritty. The things, people have always really wanted to know about the different areas of it's mainly MMO gaming that we have enjoyed and experienced for a lot of our lives.
Well, let's start off with a first question to kind of dig into a little bit of our credentials here. So, what originally got you into MMO gaming? Like when? What was your first game?
Man, so for me personally, I've probably been playing what I would call MMOs. I want to say my first MMO was probably Tibia. I gotta leave. Tibia
What is
was
Tibia? I'm not familiar with that game.
well, Google that bad boy. I think it's still running. It was very a RuneScape esque, but
Okay.
minus any attempts at 3D. Um, and I remember playing it like
So is
early
it more
middle school.
ISO like UO?
Uh, kind of
And is it?
the
I gotta Google this.
yeah. I don't know how to put this. It was it had a lot of the elements that those early MMOs had. Um, deaths, everything. You drop all your items, all that good jazz. A lot of the
Mhm.
elements that I think a lot of people are yearning for these days, but don't really know how terrible they were. Those little rose-colored glasses going on, but
Oh
it
yeah.
was just an old terrible game that I started playing with a buddy of mine, Trodius, in middle school.
Hmm.
So yeah, it was like sixth grade, and that carried us like through middle school. That was like the MMO of choice. And I remember playing it initially on dial up. Um, and
Oh,
then
yeah,
we
it's
got
a
like
complete top-down style game.
well, no, yeah, it's very top down, just moving images.
Right.
Everything was
Very
just an image load.
90s sprite RPG.
Oh yeah, for sure. Um, but yeah, we played that and got for a long time, and I played that up until Dark Age Camelot actually.
Oh wow,
Um,
that's a. When did it come out? Do you remember what about what year you were playing it?
Tibia or Dark Age? Oh
Tibia.
gosh. So I probably started playing Tibia in 98, 99.
98, 99. Yep, it's about.
Must have
I
been.
started in 99, so
So
that
what was your
was.
first MMO? Flip the question back on you.
My first MMO is technically the full 3D game would be Ashron's Call,
Hmm.
but I did play a game called Dark Age before that, and Dark Age was
Not Dark
actually
Age of Camelot.
correct.
Okay.
Just called Dark Age.
Just Dark Age.
somewhat sprite driven, much like Tibia, but it actually had such in-depth like political systems that players actually were the whole entire political structure of each city, and you could be voted out of being a member of that city. There were players who were actually the sheriffs that would walk around and enforce the laws and things like that in the game. And it actually started off kind of interesting in that everyone started as a peasant, and you only earned a class by finding a player who would mentor you into their class.
Okay.
So it was
So
a
were
very
people like
interesting
in the beginning
starting
assigned
structure. What was that?
classes? Were people in the beginning? How did someone become like a higher class initially in the very beginning?
I don't know.
Oh, it
I
just
never played it
happened.
on day
Okay.
one, but I assume devs were running around
Gotcha.
mentoring people.
Gotcha.
But the that kind of end result was very interesting in that it helped build some very interesting and dynamic communities because you had to know people. If you wanted to get a class, especially the class you wanted, you had to know how to schmooze with the right people to get offered that class.
What
Um,
would you say that was considered a like a sandbox style? I mean, was there player creation at all in there, or
there wasn't a lot of player creation, but the players did rule what was there. So because you really didn't get into the true kind of sandbox until you moved into UO. Uh, I knew a lot of people that played UO, but it's an odd thing with MMOs. When I got into MMOs originally, I was like, "Oh, that seems like a flash pan idea that's going to fail horribly." I said the same thing about Magic the Gathering. I was like, and I totally didn't get into it because I was like, that's just
yeah,
a flash pan thing. It'll be over with. And sure enough,
you were
Magic the
wrong.
Gathering is still crushing it today more than it ever
Oh
has,
yeah,
and the MMO industry is still driving on. So I was wrong in both accounts. I
oh
was
for sure,
literally
man.
convinced by a friend to come play Asheron's Call and join his guild because, they just needed good members, and he knew I was good at like first-person shooters and stuff like that. So he's like, "Come on, come on!" I'm like, "All right, sure, I'll try your stupid game,"
So playing off
and have
that,
been addicted ever since.
playing off that, what was the first guild you ever joined?
Well, in Asheron's Call, there weren't guilds as much as you just swore fealty to people.
Hmm.
And you just had fealty chains. Um, as such, I couldn't tell you what the guy's name was. I was in a guild for I think 2 months, and then the game was so popular that they decided to launch a new server, and I was like, these guys are kind of idiots. I'm gonna go start my own on the new server, and I brought a couple people with me, and we immediately started. I started my own fealty chain. So literally, I was in another guild for a whole of 2 months, and
Yeah,
then
gotcha.
moved on,
And you're
and
like,
have
I'm
been
gonna do this
running
show.
guilds ever since.
You're like, I ain't listening. I dig it. I dig it.
It's one of the things that I will say that it's fine to be critical of other people and how they do whatever their leadership style is or whatever like that, but too many people are just critical of it and don't move on and go, well, here, I'm going to go do it, and I'm going to have blackjack and hookers. Like,
Sure.
I mean, you can say that all you want, but a lot of people don't do it, and they don't do it successfully.
Hmm.
Um, if they do it. So I'm proud of the fact that I have now been running guilds and running a community since basically then. I mean, I don't really put the plague stamp on things until we moved to Dark Age of Camelot, but I've been basically running a guild since probably just the turn of in the 2000s. So 19 years.
Right on. Right on. I mean, and that's relatively. So I don't think I joined HOL, which is the guild I'm currently leader in. Oh God, is that for you or I don't know who that baby daddy is for? Um, so I don't think I joined until 2003 or four. That's when I joined Harbinger Light in Dark Age Camelot. Um, and that was actually kind of like by a strange coincidence. So I found myself like I was in the mall.
Mhm.
I was like I think I was in ninth grade of high school, right? And I had just left EB Games, um, and I was moonwalking over to Babbage's.
Yep.
Ugh, oh yeah, and met a teacher. He was in Babbage's, and I was just sitting there, and I was in the PC gaming section, which at the time was pretty terrible. But MMOs were popping at that time, and I was there, and he saw my EV Games bag, and I was looking around. I actually had Dark Age in my hand. And he was like, "What you got going on?" It's like he lit up, right? He's like, "What's going on here?" Like I never really I knew who he was, but I didn't know what was about to happen. Um, he started looking through my bag. He sees I got because I had bought like I don't know EverQuest and like 5 expansions. I guess were out at that point. I had them in my bag. They were all like $2 a pop for expansion with the base game. And he's like, nah, 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 nah. You don't need none of this. Um, Mouse, I didn't hear you there. You muted.
Oh yeah.
He
Muting,
was like,
unmuting myself good.
he said, nah, 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 nah. You don't need none of this. He said, this is what you need. And he put Dark Age of Camelot in my hand, put Shrouded Isles in my hand. And I think Trials had just came out too.
Oh wow, you
Um,
you jumped in like a couple years after it launched then.
yeah. Pretty late. I think Trials had just come out, or maybe not. Maybe I went and got Trials later. I don't remember.
Mhm.
He's like, "This is what you need." I was like, "Okay." Um, and I mean, the rest was history, Um, hopped in HOL, and I've been on the same train ever since, going from
That's good.
title to title. But yeah, like it was just an awesome, just been an awesome ride. Um, so how did you whip up and begin Plague?
Well, I ended up getting into the plague name didn't come until we went back to Dark Age of Camelot. We had initially started off playing Dark Age. I was big onto recruiting failing guilds. I shouldn't say failing. People that were like small guilds that wanted to have more people to play with, but they were just small groups of
You were
friends
you
and
were an
like that.
omnomer. Yeah, you went
Yeah.
nom 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 to
Yep,
these guilds. Yeah,
exactly.
yeah,
And it's like the best way to recruit is go, hey, if I want to know if you don't suck, well, you already exist in a guild. Let me absorb you.
yeah. So which is interesting because you were taking in like a whole bunch of smaller niche groups of players, right? So
Right.
small groups of players that were tight, and you just kept absorbing them.
Yep.
Is that what you're telling me?
One of the first guilds I absorbed on Dark Age of Camelot. So I started there. I brought several people from my Asheron's Call days over there, and then had started playing with this other group. Funny to this day, I'm currently living in the state of Minnesota. I am not from Minnesota. I am here though because of that original merger, and one of those original people got me work out here during the financial crisis in '09. So I ended up moving out here beginning of 2010, and have lived here ever since because they're like, hey, job market sucks. Here, come get a job.
I have my current position. Frankly, got my foot in the door off a reference off of HOL's old guild leader that I
Yep.
joined. That same teacher. 100%.
So
Like that was yeah.
So that's a great thing about the game community in general is that yeah, a lot of people talk a lot of smack, really try to poo poo on each other, all that other stuff. But at the end of the day, a lot of people have each other's backs, and those communities have really grown and make for very interesting and dynamic life experiences for everybody that's been in them.
Well, I think people and I think people misconstrue some good old fun trolling and overly bearing toxicity.
Hmm.
Sometimes people are just, they're just trying to get a rise up. They're picking fun. They're just
Right.
talking smack. Listen, we sit down, we play Modern Warfare right now. It's gonna Xbox Live will come out of me. You understand? Like you don't contain that smack talk. Like it just comes out. You're like, oh my god, C12. Like it happens. You can't contain it.
Like,
And
you
it's
ever come,
fun.
you know, see, like, go shoot basketball with some people in the neighborhood or do anything like that, it's all about the smack talk.
Sure, sure.
It's not a special place here in
It's not
just video
special to
game
this.
land.
Although people think it is, I think it's more the accessibility of the medium and that everyone has a voice here because of technology.
Well,
Um,
and anonymity.
True, true. You can definitely hide behind a screen name, if you will.
So, are you literally the generation of born with a joystick in your hand, or did you get into video games later?
Yeah, I'm the weird generation, right? So I'm the generation that and God, what do you even call us? No, I'm technically millennial, right? So I'm the generation that like my early childhood, like no cell phones. We had one phone, an old rotary phone in the house. Um, like you had a TV with antennas. Um,
Hmm.
like you went out when you were young, and your parents didn't know where you were till it was dark.
Yeah,
Like that was summer, that was afternoons. You got home like peace, and you came back when it was dark, right?
and no one
So
cared as long as you got home on time.
absolutely not, right? And that shifted to like when I started driving, like cell phones were pretty commonplace, and I had one. You know what I mean? Like so that we had this. I'm in that very weird generation that's like I grew up without any of this technology, like '80s kids.
Hmm.
But when I reached adolescence, like it all started coming online and becoming accessible. Um, and so yeah, like 100%, I remember like I remember when I mean we first got dial up in the house. That was a game changer. Going to Food Line as a middle schooler, but like looking for those AOL CDs. Like where is it? Where is it? I know it's out here. I know five's out. I know five's out. I know it's here. We got four. We got 4C. It should be time for five now. Um, yeah, and so it's like that was my childhood, which I think is a lot of people that kind of begin the millennial generation, which I think I do.
Hmm.
It's all conjecture when it comes to generations, but we had a very strange childhood where like everything kind of came online when I was like between 12 and 15. Like the world was
I'm
our
like the
world was
Gen
coming
Z, where it's like
online.
born in their hands, where they're like,
Oh
all
yeah, I
right,
mean, listen, I
as a
work in
baby, I'm already
education.
playing games.
I have a funny story. A funny story. Where because I work in education, I was at elementary school, and
Hmm.
I was in a lab, and these kids were lining up to leave, and I got a text message on my phone. This is an iPhone 4S, right?
Okay.
And I pull it out, and I'm checking my text message, and this little punk kid says, "Is that your phone?" I was like, "Yeah." He's like, "Why is it so small?" I was like, "What? What did you just?" And like he's sitting there holding like a 6 Plus. He's like, "That's mine. That's what I got." And it's like, "Oh my goodness!" Like I can't even. It's like it blew my mind. I was like, I gotta get out of here. I can't." Like this, he said, "Why is it so small?" I'm like, I can't even right now. Oh
It's
my
like you
goodness.
question your manhood somehow, and at
It
that
was
moment, you're just
so.
like,
I was
"What?
like,
What?"
this second grader just destroyed me in front of his whole class. This kid just destroyed me, and I was like, man, I don't know why, but that one sticks with me. That one sticks with me. It's like, oh, whoo. So yeah, I didn't have that experience. You know what I mean? Um, the highlight of my technological experience was when I finally got a hand-me-down Motorola Razor. Oh, son, the Razor. What's got? Oh my goodness, those buttons. That is the pinnacle of cell phone design. The Razor, Motorola Razor. Bring it back. Bring it
Uh,
back. Nothing gets better than Motorola Razor.
get your flip
Nothing.
phone on.
Oh my goodness. There's something about Hey, you watch your mouth, Zaylen. There's something about there's something about just being able to, I don't know, man, flipping it, closing it. There's something to that. I don't like just hitting the button. I want it's done. Shut it.
I liked
But
my
I
very
mean that
first.
yeah, that's sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead.
My very first phone, I actually that was a smartphone, was given to me by a friend who was actually one of my old officers. He had at the time sort of lied to get into officer position because we had an 18 or older policy
Uh
in
huh.
Asheron's Call, and he was 18. It was like the most mature, or he was 14, and he was like the most mature person in the guild
Mm-hmm.
because he didn't want to blow his cover, so it was like overly mature.
Yeah.
Um, so later on, in the when I moved to Virginia, that'd been like 05. He's like, oh, I went to the Google I/O conference, and they just gave away these phones. Here you go, and gave me my. It's like, oh, cool. It was like
Wow.
a dev phone too, so it was all unlocked and everything. I could like, if I knew what I was doing, I could have wrote stuff for it.
That's
I was like,
cool.
this is great. But like before that, I was a landline living old person. Like,
Yeah, no, and I will say it is, and I don't know how it reflects on other generations. I don't want to say on the age thing forever, but it's like I know for a fact I grew up in an extremely unique time. I grew up in an
mhm,
extremely unique time from a standpoint of what was acceptable from parenting. Um, I grew up in an extremely unique time from what was acceptable as like personal accountability. And the landscape is drastically changing. To put something in perspective, like I joined an online guild and I was recruited by like a teacher
mhm.
into a guild of online games, and I wasn't
Right.
like y'all have an 18-year-old rule, right? Which is a very intelligent rule to have. We didn't have that. Like we had all types of people in there, you know, and it was
Right.
like it's something you just did not even have to register on your spectrum of thought back then. And the world is definitely changed. We should change the show to old people gripes. This is
Don't
yeah
make me
the
throw my walker at you.
but yeah, it's been a shift in landscape.
Uh,
Um,
so I guess I have another question for you. Then is
yeah.
moving forward in time. So you joined this community, and then when did you decide you wanted to like kind of expand your gaming experience and actually become a leader of a community as opposed to just a member?
Oh, I didn't decide. So to
Was
give you a
thrust
quick,
upon you?
oh, absolutely, yeah. Yeah. This was no like I wanted to do it. Like I was like, someone else do this. I don't want to do it. But like, and no one else would. You know what I mean? Um,
Oh, so you lost the game of 1, 2, 3, not it.
well, so you know, it's dangerous. There's kind of a combination of it's like, okay, there's a title that you know that your guild would really enjoy playing, and it's like, but your leadership is like at a point where they're like, you know, we're not really feeling it, or you're feeling like, hey guys, what are y'all doing? So for
Right.
us, that was kind of because I joined, and Golan was the leader of HOL. We always had a council, but at the same time, we always kind of had what I would call a figurehead or somebody who seemed to be at least talking for the council. Does that make sense? Um,
Right. No, I do the same thing
sure.
with my organization. So.
Which is what we still do today, or I try to. You know, I have to shake them like, "Hey, give me your opinion." Sometimes, but so yeah, we had that, and that went through Dark Age, that went through WoW, through Warhammer, um, back through WoW, and then we wound up in SWOTOR, and that was when another member kind of took the reins of like guild leader, um, but not taking the reins of like trying to engage the community.
Heard
I
all the
guess.
cats.
Yeah, and SWOTOR, you know, had its own troubles starting up. You know, it was a theme park without a lot of gist to it, you know. Like once you got done with the individual stories, you're like, well, what do we do now? Like, oh, we're rolling alt. Not unlike other titles, but it's like that's what SWTOR was in the beginning before all the kinks were hashed out. And after SWTOR, I think we dibble dabbled in WoW again, and then Guild Wars 2 came out, and I saw Guild Wars as like this could be potentially a really good game. I was really excited for Guild Wars on paper. I never played Guild Wars 1. I beta tested it. I absolutely hated it because I hate instancing. And even today, I hate games that do instancing. I despise it. I'm like, I'm playing an MMO. I want to, if I'm in Ironforge, I want to see everybody in Ironforge on this server. I want to see them all. I want to see every single one of them. Like I don't want to play some like multiplayer esque. I want an MMO. I want to see all the people like rah screaming and just text boxes everywhere. Like that's what I want. That's the MMO experience in my opinion. And it's a madhouse, but that's what I want. I'm after that, not some. If I want a cinematic experience, I'll go download a new Tomb Raider. Like that's a cinematic experience. I don't want that in an MMO. I want a community experience, with some semblance of a game to go with it. But regardless, so Guild Wars happened, and yeah, the leadership was like, they just weren't feeling it, and I was pretty gung ho, and that's kind of when I just took the reins. I was like, hey, give me access to the website. I need access to the forums as far as like admin access, and I was like, I'm gonna host the TeamSpeak. We didn't have it at the time. And at the time, I think we were renting TeamSpeak space. Eventually, once I got domain access, I was like, bump this. I submitted a nonprofit to TeamSpeak and got the nonprofit license. I was like,
Oh,
apparently,
nice.
well, and I read it and I was like, you don't have to have, like, because Google Apps, you got to be a legit nonprofit, have your tax
Right.
papers, right? But they were like, I read it, I was like, can just a guild do this? And I tried it. They were like, here you go, buddy. I was like, woo! Got that license.
Wow, I feel I spent way too much of my
Well, it was,
TeamSpeak server apparently.
again, you could host TeamSpeak on anything, guys. Like,
Oh
all you
yeah.
need is somebody with some web. But that was a big, like, we did that early on, and that was a big, nice bump to the community to be able to be like, hey, we have a 512 slot TeamSpeak server. If you
Oh
need to
yeah.
use it, you can use it. It's just, we're just fighting bandwidth here. But no, I did that, and eventually I was just kind of like, I just inherited it. I just kind of started doing the networking. And the current leader was he was just in a different place in his life, and he was focusing more on his professional life, and it just kind of happened.
Yeah, real life getting in the way.
Yeah, I can't believe it. But I mean, it is one of our main tenets. Is like it's important to step away when real life happens. So
Oh yeah,
like
definitely.
you got to, and we never want people to feel pressure to continue playing. And you never want to put off real life for the video game. Like relax, we're here
Oh
when
yeah.
you're ready to come back. Um, but yeah, I mean that's essentially ever since Guild Wars 2 launched, I've kind of been at the helm of that, and it's just the rest has just kind of been a history of hippity hopping around.
So, looking farther in the future, what do you feel is how to put this? Do you think the MMO space truly has room for things like VR and the furtherment of technology in that direction? And do you think that will impede community or expand gameplay, or what do you think that will bring to the game?
I think niche games, I think they need to happen because I'd love to see the tech push forward, but I think they're just always a huge risk for developers to take, especially when you have like a unique hardware requirement, right? Something like a VR headset, which is so, it's so above and beyond. I would much rather have an experience that offers VR, but can be played by everybody with keyboard and mouse, right? And if you have VR, you're like, it's a next level experience. All right, like shut the front door. This is awesome, but it's accessible to everybody. I think that would be speaking specifically to VR. And yeah, like VR chat talking about and Twitch chat there. that is an MMO, and though there's not a whole lot of objectives in that, but it looks like more fun than I care to mention. As someone who has not had a VR, someone who doesn't have VR, like if I got one, that would be the first thing I do is go to VR chat and just walk around and say, "Do you know the way?" That's all. That's all I would do. I mean, I could probably make a week of entertainment of that. Of just going around as the knuckles and going, "Do you know the way?" Like that. I don't know. That just seems the most fun in the world to me. But that's what makes the space awesome is just the randomness of the experiences. Um, where that, I mean, it's just a clean slate, and people were able to create. I mean, we see what the internet has become from a social platform. It's like the internet culture in and of itself has constantly defines itself based off the will of the masses, and it even defines itself against the will of the masses because of the nature of the desire for anarchy within internet culture itself.
Oh yeah.
Um, and that's just I find it absolutely fascinating, and that's what I really enjoy about MMOs is how that's able to leak. And not only how so much internet culture has come out of that, but how we get those leaks back into the games. Because ultimately we're all the same people. We're all the same people, just looking for a fun experience to play together. But getting back to your question, I think it's definitely fine for those niche experiences, and I think that's the future. That because we've seen time and time again, everyone chasing after that WoW revenue and that WoW drive, um, which at this point World
So
of
you think
Warcraft is.
VR will be like the next market that gives that opportunity for the big boom,
Well,
that
I think
new
VR will be.
power?
So, in my opinion, I think VR needs to be treated much like a, a console. In that, I think the really successful VR experiences are going to be the ones, and I hate to say it, like the Oculus one, where it's a complete package, and you get it, you strap it on your head. There's nothing to it. That said, I think the definitive editions or the definitive versions and the versions that drive the technology forward are still going to be run on the big bad machines, dual 2080 Ti's, and running this mess at 4K in each eye, 120 frames per second. It's like that's the
Well, yeah, you've
definitive.
got games like Star Citizen and whatnot that are looking to push that VR technology into at least piloting space and whatnot like that. So when you are trying to fly an aircraft, you can actually see and look around and see the world around you, unlike the flaw of a screen, which is that lock in of that 90-degree angle.
No, I 100%. When you in VR, if you can produce an experience where the subject is stationary, I think you already got to win. The only VR I really really messed with was the original Oculus Dev Kit, which was like 480p per eye. And I can
Yeah.
say, even in that experience, even though it was terribly, LCDs were hot garbage, right? Low refresh rate, it was terrible. But even in that experience, like it was, the sense of presence was there, and I could not imagine what some of these newer headsets. And I really would like to get one. I don't think I've seen an experience that really sells me on it. Nor do I have a big enough desire to really pull the trigger, but I might because I don't know
Unless
that
you
it's the
really are
next.
attracted to Beat Saber. I mean, Beat
Well,
Saber
yeah,
looks
everyone says
like
Beat
a
Saber. I don't know that it's the next direction for MMOs per se, but I can definitely tell you the potential for a market in that space is definitely there. I just think more of these devices need to get out in the ecosystem, and I think maintaining backwards compatibility is going to be extremely important. Where that's why again a seated situation where you really just have to have the helmet, um, controllers or a keyboard and mouse is ideal, because a lot of people can get into that for $500 versus setting up, a 10 by 10 space, which is that having the room tracking is limits your clientele so much. So yeah, I think if they could work an MMO, much like Star Citizen, or something similar around having a stationary subject and working your title around a stationary subject, yeah, it'd be very very immersing.
I
Um,
think Zalen misses sort of the point, which is that a lot of people would get VR with families so they could ignore their families more effectively.
well, yeah, I don't. I mean, I even know in the current Oculus, it doesn't have pass through audio, so that you can turn it on so that if there is noise outside, it will pass that through. You're not isolated,
Right.
um, and you don't have to be isolated. It's just if you know, I don't see how it's that much different than sitting in front of the computer anyway. That said, you need some standards in place. You ain't trying to play like get really into something, someone tap you on the shoulder. Like that's you're gonna break something. Someone's gonna freak out. You come tap me on the shoulder. Oh, you get karate chopped.
so, so personally, and this is something that we haven't really seen on the market, and I honestly think it's a would be a beautiful marriage of an idea. Is that I would like to see MMOs use some type of glasses technology or something and allow us to move into the augmented reality scope. I would like to see be able to
Well,
look
I
at my
think you have
screen.
very successful apps that already do that. Like I think Pokemon Go has been a very successful example of an app that brings a
Oh yeah,
community of
yeah.
players together, that does implement AR. And you want to talk about an app that got people that never, like I know for a fact, never go outside, and they're sitting there walking around in parks.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Um, like it's absolutely like it's revolutionary. Like that one single title has done that.
But
Um,
what I would actually like to see, honestly, is the movement from like you see your screen, you're looking at your screen, you're playing your
you want an
game.
interface.
I want to see the UI move to my augmented reality and have my screen clear so that I can rearrange my augmented reality as I see fit and can see through it more effectively. My health bars, my whether I'm in combat, whether I'm things like that, all
Mm-hmm.
those types of data points, and I can have either a very streamlined or almost no UI in game to be able to play, allowing to remove screen clutter. I think these are things that, like in the MMO space in particular,
Now you're still talking
I
about an
think
augmented title, right?
yeah, totally
So
augmented.
so
Like,
you're essentially you're bringing like we're going to siege a castle. We're actually really just larping in the park with our glasses on.
no, no, no. I'm
Um,
talking about literally me sitting here playing a game
yeah.
on my
Okay.
screen. So I'm playing an MMO right now, but pull that whole UI
Just pull the
projected
UI
in my
on there. Okay.
lenses
And then
so
have
that
like a more wraparound screen experience. Okay.
right
Again, I
and
think that would more easily be handled with something like VR because instead of having to create a completely separate device. Now, granted, listen, if like Google Glass or HoloLens like become consumer ready products,
right,
like I'm pretty sure Google Glass was scrapped. I don't know what the market for wearables is, and even so, I don't know what that there will be enough of them out there that game companies are like, we could utilize this. Unlike phones,
right,
phones took off. Like smartphones just flew away, but
right.
wearables have not taken off. I think the watch is kind of taken on or taken off, but so much of a watch.
Much more popular.
Well, yeah, so much of the watch though is still more of a accessory and less a utility piece. Especially for men, they just like to have a watch, and it's not so much that they use the watch, except for anything beyond time. They're like chronograph. I don't even know. I guess it does that. I just like it. It looks cool. Um, but yeah,
I
that's
see
a
a
good point. Who
lot of people,
doesn't?
especially in the tech industry, who are always looking at their, oh, I got a message. Oh, I got an email. Oh, I got this.
Yeah, and
And
I'm
they're
just
always be
speaking.
able to stay connected in
Yeah,
that
but
space
again,
because
for
of
me,
that.
I just pull the phone out, man. I do. So I don't know about wearables.
And we'd hate you in meetings for doing it.
Sure. I am more interested to see, you know, tech as far as increasing the way I can interact with my phone beyond just my thumbs. I'm definitely interested in any tech that does that. But as it stands for wearables, I don't know. I don't think they're going to take off, and that's why I think VR goggles for anything like that, where you're trying to really hammer down on immersion. I think VR has got immersion really figured out right now, and that tech is only going to get more refined, and it seems to be getting more and more popular. Which is why I think, yeah, I think VR is definitely here to stay, and there's no reason it won't leak into our MMOs. It already has. It's just it's not in our space, and so I think we're kind of jaded in our assumption that it's taken off or not.
Right.
I think that's the reality of it.
So at this point, you've have a long gaming experience. You've been playing for some 20 years in the MMO
Yeah,
space. What would you say is the your favorite, the best
Dark Age of Camelot.
overall Dark
That's
Age Camelot?
no. That again, a lot of that's rose colored glasses.
Well, there's nothing wrong with some rose-colored glasses. I mean, it inspires memory and inspires
Sure. But if I'm being real about
nostalgia.
Dark Age, if I'm being real about Dark Age, like I remember spending summers in high school, like we spent weeks grinding. Like we'd have a group of people come out and we just grind them up, farming like Sobekite Hulks or the what was it, corsating mines with the hags. Like we just spent like that's all we did for hours. You sit the stupid pet out and bring them back into the mushrooms and tank them. Like and you're like, is that fun? Do I want to do that today? And the answer is heck no. Like no, that wasn't fun. It was serving a purpose, right? And the purpose was like, even at the time we were bored to death. Like we were on talking to each other, building relationship, but it was just like, ooh, this is getting pretty rough. And everyone gets that with grinding. And I'm no fan of grinding, but you did that to serve the purpose of going out into RVR so you could bring your A game, right? So
Mhm.
that's what Dark Age had a lot of. And then you transition to a game like WoW, which I was very adamant against going to. In fact,
Mhm.
I bought it and sold my account to another member, like a guild member, who was like, I don't know. I logged in I gave it like 10 hours, and I was like, this is stupid. I gotta go farm. I was like, this is dumb. I don't want to do this. Um, and eventually it pulled everyone, and I will say I've had some awesome memories in WoW, but I can't look back on that game and be like, this was fun playing through and through. Like I enjoyed every time I logged in. Yeah, I can't really look back on it and say that. In fact, quite the opposite. Everyone got to that point of burnout where it's just like, I despise playing this game. Where it's like, I've leveled every alt. Like I got them all up because that was the only thing I really enjoyed doing was leveling characters. I didn't like any of the other real content. So, so I'm not sure. Really, if I had to nail, and you're gonna hate me.
Okay.
I want to say it. If I had to say a game, um, and it's even more recent too. So I'm not looking through rose-colored goggles that I truly enjoyed. It's gonna be Arcade. I will say it. I said Arcade. I said it. I said it, man. I said it. It's Arcade. God, what a fun game. That was a fun game. And I hated it, but I loved it too.
Arcade was the I think one of my officers and council members says it best. Arcade is the perfect game that was only 90% complete.
God.
And if it ever finished itself, it would have been the most amazing, perfect place. But it's the closest we've ever been able to
Listen, and I'm
experience.
saying that as a person who, like, I am not, I'm fairly confident I'm not going to Arcade Unchained, right? But I'm still willing to sit here and tell you, Arcade and the months we spent there has been some of my most enjoyable time playing an MMO. And it's because of the things I enjoy about the MMO, the interaction with the community, that we were forced to work together. There was no, like, I'm just going to ignore this person. Like, you had to confront and solve your problems. Like, guilds had to communicate. Like, we had to work, because if you didn't, you're just going to kill each other. So unless you were
Right, that
fine
was
just
the
killing each
greatest
other,
thing was, okay, so we have a political difference. If I'm playing WoW or I'm playing whatever, we're on the same faction, so there's really nothing you can do about it.
nothing you
Maybe you
can
can come
do.
steal a boss mob from
Nothing
me
you
or
can do.
something.
Even Dark Age, nothing you can do. You're all on the same
Right.
side.
Yep.
Camelot
But
Unchained, you're all on the same side. Like, listen,
I'm just like,
there
nope. I
were
turn around, I
no
purple on your guild, and I
correct.
murder them where they stand because they're trying
God,
to do
it was
content.
crummy, but man,
Oh,
what did it force? It forced some communication, and I've never seen a game force community like that. Of all the games we played, everything was always about here's this cinematic. Again, it's a lot of games we played have been these theme parks, where it's like here's this. Okay, not cinematic. Here's a shallow story compared to AAA single player titles at the time. It's pretty shallow, but you get to do it with friends. And then once you're done, you've developed mastery, so now you can play the game. You know how to play your character because it's overly complex, which is fine. So now you know how to play a character. You spec it. We sprinkle a little RPG in there. Now go take your friends and go do some challenges. Like that's been the story of MMOs, but that's not what Arcade was. Arcade was I don't give a crap. Like I will take your stuff. It's like it was just it didn't matter. None of that. There was none of that. You could hop in, and that's again why I'm excited about games like Star Citizen. Is what you had up here was what you brought to Arcade, right? And that same is applicable for titles like Star Citizen. It's like it doesn't matter how much time I put into the game. It's about what's here. What do I know? What can I do? And apply that. Like it's that complex. And there was a lot of like, hey, listen, we're not going to argue that top 1% didn't grind and then the whales exceeded that, sure.
oh, yeah.
And that's what ultimately made the game really unfun. But that wasn't the point. The point is a lot of knowledge went a long way beyond when it came to being profitable and when it came to being somebody in that game beyond just grinding. Excuse me. What were you going to say? I'm sorry.
I was going to say, so taking that a step farther as to what you were going on about, with the fact that you seem to have at least alluded to or expressed that you find that a lot of the starting fluff in RPG is not your thing, because if you wanted to do it, you would do a single player game that does it more in depth and completely. Because do you think
say that's not entirely true though? Because I would, again, if I had a game that started me off and spun me up like
Mhm.
a Skyrim or an Oblivion, and just shot me out into this open world with nothing, like here you go, buddy, you want to get better with that sword, you better go beat something with it, like, and just shot me out there like that, which is very reminiscent of a lot of classic MMOs.
Mhm.
Um, a title like that definitely excites me with a lot of the sandbox elements that have been developed over time, giving abilities to players to section off, carve out pieces of that world for them, create, have some sort of housing in there, force us to trade and create a player market, force us to create items ourselves. I would very much be interested in a game like that, which I
Right.
think is what you
So,
were getting at.
do you think then? I guess in the when you're looking, if you were to make a manifesto right now to the MMO game companies out there, should they spend thousands of hours of manpower, years of labor, all to build these intense, incredible storylines like Star Wars: The Old Republic, ESO, things like that, or should they
Well,
move into more of a Camelot Unchained or a Star Citizen, where the story is there and there is this backflow of what's going on, but in general, the story in the world is built by the players, the community, and the sandboxiness of the game.
yeah, bump that noise of creating a cinematic experience. Stop it. Listen, I can't be the hero when I turned like, you saved us, and I got like 6 other people right here who did the same thing. I'm like, what do you mean I saved us? What are they doing? They're right there. Did they save us too? You're giving them the same thing. What are you doing? That's me. You can't do it. Like, it's just so
You can't be.
immersion
You have
breaking.
made the king and ultimate badassiness of badassiness,
And
and you're
it's
like,
okay.
next guy. You are now the ultimate king of badass.
I'm
Something
not
like,
saying you can't have story elements like in an instance where I do something by myself, um, or if I bring friends in. I think Guild Wars 2 did a very good job with story. Like Living Story, it's instance, it's by myself. I don't see other people running around in my story. I am the commander, and it's
right.
all based around me. And everyone experienced it, but they're not part of my story, right? The point is, I just don't think it's necessary in an MMO. I really don't. I don't think it's necessary for progression, because the problem is they link and they lock this storyline into progression, and then you've enjoyed playing the game through this story, and then you're like, I'm at the end. Now what? And that now what is always so shallow, because the now what was no fun because
Now
no one ever tested it.
MMO experience, which is raiding and PvP and all of those types of
Correct.
things.
And when people get those things right, like you have a successful MMO that's continuing to go today. But I don't think you have a successful MMO when you just get your story right. Like I see people saying SWTOR had great class stories. I completely agree. And the problem with us was that after you did them all, there was no reason to log back into the game. Like that's why we inevitably left. Now they have since turned their mess around, and
Right.
they have made those game types fun. But in the beginning, I was like, I can only play Hutball so much. Like I'm done with Hutball. Like I was like, I've got nothing else
Why
to
we
do but
left
Hutball.
originally. Yep.
And it's like there's nothing else, because the open world was just broke. The open world PvP. And for me, MMOs, I don't say I'm a competitive player, but ultimately, I am a competitive player. I'm just not overly competitive, but I do like to be pitted against other players. And for me, like that's why I'm playing an MMO. I don't want to just get a gaggle of like 300 people behind me and let's go fight computers. I don't
Well,
want to do that.
so as Narthesis was kind of moving into into the concept of is if someone actually developed a storyline where you felt like you were, and this is kind of where I fell in love with Asheron's Call, was that the story happened. Your hero-ness or not hero-ness was your interaction with the community in that space. Whereas currently, so you go play SWTOR, you go play even ArcAge or any WoW or anything like that, you are always, even Dark Age of Camelot did the whole thing. You saved the king and da 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 da. You're like, no, I didn't. And neither did that guy, and neither did the guy behind him. It's like if they wrote story that was more compelling for and without making it sound like, and now you're a moronic peasant again. Like
So
I would like
I
to
want a
see a game
story.
write it where it felt like it doesn't end in this culmination of superherodom, where you are just a grand soldier who did his job and fought hard.
Yeah. Narthesis makes a great point, and story is the tool that has utilized to get people between zones. But again, that is coming from the standpoint of a theme park game, which is what I'm adamantly standing against in this MMO. Like I'm over it. I don't want theme park games anymore. I don't. Yeah, even though when I'm like, do I want a theme park game to get me to awesome end game? I'm like, oh, maybe, but no, I just don't want it. Like, stop forcing this theme park on me. Stop wasting so many hours on this theme park. Let me be a little guy. Like, don't make me the hero anymore. Like, just let me be a little guy and give me story that's about the little guy. Like, you don't have to do these grandiose, world changing things in your story.
Yeah,
Like,
we're
you
not
can
playing a single
still,
player game where I am the hero going
right, you
through
can
the
still
story.
save a
Right.
town. You can still do these little things, and everyone doesn't have to experience the same thing. And that's where I don't want like a whole overarching story. If you played a game where quests were spun up dynamically based off need, and you essentially really for some reason stayed in this area and were really helping out this one town, and that gives you some sort of reverence towards a specific town or towards a specific people group, and maybe you get like better prices when shopping there, blah blah blah. Like that's a way of showing a character, or like the NPCs like greet you and like, oh wow, thank you for blah blah blah. That's a way of showing a character dynamically, like you had an effect on this world. that another rando person walking through does not get the same response. Like that is an MMO experience to me. Like I
Right.
want that, and that's a very simple system to set up based off a town prestige system. But again, going back to what Narthis has said, I do not necessarily know how you transition the player out of that world. I think again, dynamically spinning up quests based off of where the server realizes there's a player depravity. If there's not a lot of people out here, and maybe again, there's nothing wrong with an NPC threat, right? Like
Right.
monsters spooling up to raid towns. That's when Ashes of Creation pitched that idea. Like, there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
Um,
Arcade Camelot did literally. I
did you
said,
say Arcade Camelot?
what the hell did I just say? Woo. Um.
Maybe I do want Farmville Plague. Maybe I do because again, that those are some of the best elements I enjoyed about Arcade. Just like I had my downtime, I was me. Um, and thanks for the follow, Vree. I was me, and then I collected my personal wealth, or I had that sense of community. We were working together, but then I took that and I made what I needed to do war, and then we went and did that as a group. That's completely okay. That's what I want out of Camelot Unchained. That's exactly what I want. I want that a lot of downtime where we are really building things up. We're building a homestead. We're supporting our crafters for those moments of, hey, this battlefront's still here. Don't forget about it. We need to go out there and do that. Um,
Well, that's what I
I,
liked when I was trying to say
talking
before,
about
but
Asheron's
failed
Call.
horribly. Is Asheron's Call is
Yeah.
that like they would put a world monster running around by controlled by a dev who was like he would call out guild leaders, he would do all kinds of stuff, and like would wreak havoc on the game. And then they would open portals that would invade towns, and people would gather together and fight. And you became a hero because the community decided you were a hero because you gathered everyone together and you fought off the portal, and that made you a hero instead of the
Yeah.
game telling you you're a hero because you completed some quest.
Yeah. I
And
don't want
I
participation trophies in
that
my games. I don't want
right.
participation trophies.
Right, I feel that's in the game spaces for MMOs. We'd like to see more reward and individuality applied to those that work hard in the game without making them overpowered. Make them give them that love and fluff. And I think, as Narthis has said, COE is a good example of that, where they want to have this. Well, this person's king, this person's a duke, this person's a mayor, this is a whatever, and if you can gather the people together behind you and you can lead people and you can do all these other things, you can get vote like eventually take over the position of king, and you can take over
Right.
the duke, and it doesn't
Based off
matter what
gaining
people paid
influence.
money
Yeah.
to do.
Yeah.
You could just take it from them and go
No,
thanks
yeah, these
because
purchase
I
positions are
did it
only
from
initial.
hard work in the game.
Yeah. No, and I'm very excited for COE. I think it is a very broad scope of what they're trying to do, but I think they are also being pretty real about their own expectations, and they are focused. They're doubling down and focusing on story, which I think is very nice. But what attracts me to COE is everyone doesn't have the same story. In fact, nobody has the same story. That's what's really attracting me to it. Like, it's a sandbox where they have those dynamic elements where players are, again, quests are manually created by people to do an objective, but at the same time they're dynamically spun up to keep the world alive. I'm genuinely excited, and that game is definitely one I'm looking at and watching for because it seems awesome. What I wanted to say about talking about like the sandbox experiences is I think ultimately I've come to the point in gaming where I'm just I, I know I can't compete on a time level with a lot of people that come and play in games like so again we'll talk about CU. There are people that are always going to be better than me as far as stats are concerned, especially in a game that has soft caps and no hard caps, which is my current understanding of their skills. Again, the difference is going to be minimal, But they made it pretty clear, like, listen, if you spawn, you grab a two-handed sword, and all you do is swing for 12 hours a day with that two-handed sword, and no one else does that, you're gonna be the best. You'll have the best modifier. It doesn't mean you'll be the best player, but it means your character will be the best with that. And I'm okay with that. And I think people that put the time in should be rewarded for their time. And that's okay.
Oh, as long as you make it a progression curve that gets harder and harder and harder, so that
correct.
like while they're a few points ahead of you, they're not
No,
dominating
there
you.
needs to be. There always needs to be that median.
Yeah,
And from an ultra Care Bear nature, I'm a big fan of a game.
you look like a big Care Bear.
Well, I'm a big fan of like how Guild Wars 2 has done it, where it's like there is like, hey, listen, boom, that's the stat cap. No matter what you do, you can't get better than when it launched. It was exotic. Then they released Ascended, and it's like you can't beat it. No matter what combo, you're not going to get better gear than Ascended. And almost, I would say 90% of the population at least has a full set of Ascended
Right.
in Guild Wars at this point. From a competitive, of people
Right.
doing World War
And
One.
really, that's only a 5% increase from the exotic set.
Yeah, it's so minimal. But it's like, but here's the point. It's like, that's it. That's the cap. Oh, you still want to play the game? We're going this way. So
Right.
we're going to have horizontal progression. So you just get more variety of the areas that you can play in. And I am a humongous fan of that. That doesn't mean I don't like vertical progression, but I definitely want there to be a point where it's like, hey, it just gets really hard and people can keep going up there, but the benefit is pretty minimal. And then I start my, horizontal shifts. And I definitely want that to be attainable for what I would classify as the average gamer, someone who puts maybe 3 hours a day or every other day in. I think 3 hours a day is probably pretty average.
Pretty solid.
Pretty average.
So, just we're kind of hitting our time limit. We kind of want to hang out about an hour.
We're doing 2 hours today.
2 hours. We're just gonna go on for 2 hours. It's your turn to ask me questions. Let's do that. But since we're gonna try to keep this about an hour show, and I guess when we have our guests, we may want to go longer because they may want to really expound on some stuff. But I would like to try to I think we want to keep this about an hour.
Well, yeah, this show was about us today. Today's show was really focused about us, trying to get an idea for how we feel about a lot of different titles. And I think y'all, definitely have that. I know you have kind of my point of view on a lot of different things. And that'll be expounded upon too when we really hammer into some guests.
Well, the next step is as we announced, the show is going to be called MMO Grind, and as a play on the words of MMO Grind, we are also going to move into drinking coffee while doing these interviews. As such, we're looking for our wonderful viewers to give us some ideas and some brands that we should try and drink during the show. So please give some shout
challenge coffee. I don't know about challenge coffee.
We can do challenge coffee. I'm down with challenge coffee.
I don't know about challenge coffee.
Oh yeah,
I don't need to get up from
how
the show
wired
in the
we
middle.
get by the time an hour's over and drinking.
Yeah,
I think it's great. Yeah, MMOs are spectacular. Yeah. So taking that into account, how do you like your coffee?
Listen, there's two extremes. Extreme number one. First off, I've started on this cold brew thing. Cold brew is life changing. You understand? Everybody listening right now, cold brew is life changing. You got to understand. I've never in my life. It's magic. It's just magic. But I either like it basically black, or I like to whip it up. You know what I mean? I'm talking. It's like, is that cream? Oh, like there's some coffee in there. Like it's one of those two extremes, like black with sugar or like done up.
You want a
nothing in between.
Frappuccino, Camarella,
correct?
Chino with super sugar and extra whipped cream.
Give me that, or like black and some sugar. Like those are the two extremes, and that's a mood too, right? It's definitely a mood. Like black and sugar is like I gotta get something done. The other one, like all done up, I'll probably have like 8, 9 p.m. Like, I'm gonna treat myself. I'll
There
flip that
probably ain't
on
no
you. How
caffeine
you like
anywhere.
your coffee, Malice?
Sugar rush will crash me later, and I'll go right to sleep.
How you like your coffee?
Well, if we're talking a basic cup of coffee, I like a little bit of cream, about a half a packet of sugar. Other than that, I do like the cappuccinos and the lattes and things like that. But I just don't get into the over sweet. Like I said, I only do like a half a packet of sugar. I want to take the edge off of it, but I don't want to because I don't like pure black coffee. That's a little too bitter for me. But I mean, I don't like
Hey,
things competing with my soul.
cold brew is
So
game changing, guys. Cold brew is game changing. You gotta understand. It's a whole new world. It's game changing. Um,
all
but
right.
yeah.
Well, you wanna lead us out with a good rundown of
Bye,
what we're
guys.
planning
I'm
on
just playing. I'm
Bye,
just playing.
guys.
Yeah. No. Everybody, thank you guys so much for coming to the stream. We hope to be back. Same time, same place. Tuesdays at when we start 7. Tuesdays at 7.
7 Eastern
If
or
anyone
Central.
here, is interested, if you're opinionated in this space, we want to talk to you, whether you agree, disagree, whatever. Essentially, we're just trying to get voices out, about the space. A lot of people have a lot of varying opinions about, what they like out of a game. And that's okay. That's the beauty of the internet. You find people that you agree with, and you find people you disagree with.
And I think the more that we get a chance to express a lot of these opinions and a lot of these ideas out in a more constructive manner, you see a lot of these kind of playthrough videos, a lot of these streamers who are, here's this new game, and I'm just going to bash on it for the next hour. Things like that. I think that as a community, we need to be more constructive with exactly what we want to see. We want to let developers know we want these aspects of a game. We want to see this as the growth in the future of the MMO space. And everybody's going to have their own opinion, and we want those opinions to be heard so that those developers can actually hear those ideas and hopefully modify future games to fit our real needs as opposed to their perceived needs.
And to come off that too, obviously in the main SGL town hall, we as leaders have definitely been talking about other potential titles as of late, and we'll continue to do so, I believe. That said, if you have a specific point of view or are very opinionated on a specific title or something and would like to come in here, come on. We will. I, we'll examine that beforehand if it's someone we're not familiar with, which is pretty rare. But we just want to break it down with you and see what it is that you think makes it great or what you think makes it terrible, and just see where these things line up. And the whole idea is really just to talk, guys. Just to get ideas out there, and that's really what it comes down to. You don't. There's no true objective of trying to come to what is the best MMO. It doesn't exist. It's completely
That is
opinionated.
untrue. It just hasn't been made yet.
It's as true as it gets. Everyone has what they like, and I think that's the important goal of what this stream is to help people understand that, like, one, what you like is okay, and it doesn't have to be what me or Malice agree on.
Completely untrue.
Yeah. So yeah, that's the show, and
All right.
yeah,
Well, let's wrap this up. Thank you guys for showing up and watching us blather at each other for an hour. And I hope to see you guys next week.
yeah.
Thank
Bye
you
bye,
very much.
guys. Y'all have a good one. Thanks for watching.